It was one of those calm Saturday mornings when life felt predictable, almost peaceful. I grabbed Michael's car keys, humming softly as I made my grocery list. My own car was low on gas, and I thought, why not use his? The sunlight stretched across the driveway, warm and golden, the kind of light that makes you believe everything's fine. I popped open the trunk, expecting nothing more than the usual clutter. But tucked neatly inside a small paper bag was something I couldn't ignore. A baby blanket, pale yellow, soft as a whisper, with the words, "Welcome home, baby," stitched across it. My heart stuttered. For a second, I couldn't breathe. We only had Ella, our 10-year-old miracle. Michael had always said one was enough, that another child would be too much responsibility. My fingers trembled as I lifted the fabric. It smelled faintly of powder and something heartbreakingly new, something that didn't belong to us. And then I heard his voice. "Hey, I was going to take that later. Need to check the oil." I turned, clutching the blanket like evidence. He stopped dead, eyes flicking from me to the bag. "You have something in the trunk, Michael," I said quietly. He laughed, nervous, brittle. "What? Just tools?" I held it up, my voice shaking. "Does this look like a wrench to you?" His color vanished. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out, just silence, heavy enough to crush the morning. The silence between us stretched, thick and suffocating. I could hear the faint buzz of a lawnmower down the street, birds chattering like nothing had changed, but everything had. He stared at me, still searching for words that wouldn't come. My fingers clenched around the blanket, the threads digging into my skin. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand an answer. But another part, the quieter, colder one, was already cataloging the moment. The look in his eyes, the panic, the guilt. I placed the blanket back in the bag, careful, deliberate, like I was sealing away proof of something unholy. "Whose is it?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. His lips parted, but he didn't speak. The way his jaw tightened told me more than any excuse could. For years I'd trusted him. I'd built our life on that trust. The routines, the dinners, the shared mornings. And now, standing there with that blanket, I realized how fragile it all was. One secret, and the foundation cracked. He reached for the bag, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said, sharper than I meant to. He froze. For a second, I saw the man I married, the one who held Ella when she was sick, who danced with me in the kitchen. But then I saw the stranger, the liar behind his eyes. My pulse pounded in my ears. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal I suspected or the truth I was too afraid to confirm. All I knew was that the morning was gone. Whatever came next would change everything. He tried to laugh it off later, brushing his hand through his hair the way he always did when he was caught in a lie too small to matter. But this wasn't small. "You're overthinking it, Laura," he said, forcing a grin that never reached his eyes. "It's probably something left from when I helped someone move." His words floated between us, flimsy and fragile. My chest tightened, not from anger, at least not yet, but from the slow, sinking realization that I didn't recognize this man anymore. I nodded, pretending to accept it, because sometimes pretending is the only shield we have. "Sure," I said, letting my voice stay calm. "That must be it." He looked relieved, as if my quiet meant forgiveness. But inside, a part of me was already shifting, watching, listening, taking mental notes. Every movement he made felt rehearsed, every breath measured. He kissed my forehead before heading back inside, and I stood there for a long time, the morning sun now too bright, too cruel. When I finally closed the trunk, I caught my reflection in the car window. Tired eyes, trembling lips, a woman holding back a storm. I didn't know it then, but that single moment marked the beginning of something darker. That night, I'd sit at the kitchen table, the blanket between us like a ghost neither of us could bury. And that's where the lies would begin, That night, the house felt colder than usual. Ella was asleep upstairs, her nightlight casting soft shapes on the hallway wall. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the baby blanket folded neatly in front of me. It looked harmless, sweet, even, but it pulsed like guilt between us. When Michael finally walked in, I didn't say a word. I just watched him realize what was waiting for him. The color drained from his face before he even sat down. "Okay," he started, rubbing the back of his neck. "It's not what you think." I almost laughed. "Oh, thank God," I said, my voice sharp with disbelief. "Because what I think is that my husband has a secret baby." He flinched, like my words had weight. "It's not mine," he said too quickly. "A coworker left it in my car. She needed help moving some stuff." My stare didn't soften. "So you helped her move baby supplies?" He hesitated, blinking too much, grasping for control he no longer had. "She's a single mom, Laura. I was just being nice." That sentence hung in the air like cigarette smoke, thin but poisonous. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Right. And did she thank you with a car seat or a pacifier?" His jaw tensed. He looked away, tracing a crack in the table that wasn't there. That's when I knew the truth lived somewhere he was too afraid to go. And I was just starting to understand how far I'd go to uncover it. The silence stretched again, the kind that presses on your chest until it hurts to breathe. Michael stared at the blanket like it might offer him a better excuse. "You're really going to do this?" he asked, voice low, almost pleading. I tilted my head, watching him closely. "Do what, Michael? Ask you a question you can't answer?" He sighed, rubbing his temples, trying to summon sincerity. But it was all performance, every word rehearsed, every gesture calculated. He had no idea I'd already memorized his lies long before this night. I remembered the way he used to tell stories about his coworkers, how easily he'd laugh about their chaos, their drama. Yet he'd never mentioned a single mom who needed help, not once. The detail alone told me this was new and messy. "Michael," I said softly, the calm before the storm. "If there's something you're hiding, tell me now. Because this—" I gestured toward the blanket. "This is the kind of lie that changes everything." He didn't answer. He didn't even look up. And that silence said more than any confession ever could. Something inside me shifted then. Not a scream, not anger, just a quiet understanding that I was married to a man who could no longer meet my eyes. I studied him the way you study a stranger, searching for some trace of the person you once loved. But there was only distance now, a hollow space between us that even truth couldn't fill. And while he avoided my gaze, I began to make a quiet promise to myself. If he wouldn't tell me the truth, I'd find it on my own. He finally muttered, "You're overreacting." And that was it. The last thread of patience inside me snapped. I stood, pushing the chair back slowly, careful not to let my voice rise. "You know what's funny, Michael? You say that every time you're caught." His eyes flicked toward me, defensive, small. "I'm telling you the truth," he insisted. But even he didn't sound convinced. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But truth doesn't need defending this hard. Lies do. The clock on the wall ticked between us, steady and cruel. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the wind brushing against the kitchen window. It was strange how the world stayed the same while mine quietly collapsed. I glanced down at the blanket again, its softness now unbearable. Something meant for comfort had become a weapon. I folded it carefully, not because I cared about it, but because I knew I'd need it later. Proof always starts small. When I looked up, Michael had already walked away, muttering something about work in the morning. I didn't stop him. Let him think he'd talked his way out of it. But as the front door clicked shut, I sat back down at the table and opened my phone. If he wouldn't give me answers, I'd find them myself. And by the end of that week, I'd wish I hadn't. The days that followed were filled with quiet observation. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I just watched. That's the thing about betrayal. It teaches you patience. Michael thought the storm had passed, that my silence meant forgiveness. But silence can be louder than rage when it's loaded with intent. I waited until he left for work before I began my search, starting with the obvious, the phone he guarded like a secret diary. I wasn't proud of it, but pride doesn't survive lies. His messages were clean, too clean. No one erases that perfectly unless they've practiced. I moved on to his emails, scrolling through work threads and old invoices until one address caught my attention. It appeared over and over in his GPS history, too. A small apartment complex across town. The same route, the same hours. Repetition leaves fingerprints, even on digital skin. My pulse quickened, but I kept going. I needed to see it. The next morning, I drove there. The air felt heavy, like it already knew what I was about to find. I parked a few blocks away and waited, pretending to check my phone, heart thudding in my chest. And then she appeared, a woman holding a baby wrapped in that same pale yellow blanket. My breath caught in my throat. I gripped the steering wheel, every nerve in my body screaming what my mind refused to accept. He didn't just cheat. He built another life. I stayed parked for nearly an hour, unable to move. My fingers traced the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The woman's movements were gentle, practiced. She wasn't babysitting, she was mothering. And that blanket, it wasn't just similar, it was identical. The same embroidery, the same soft yellow I'd held in my shaking hands days ago. I watched as she disappeared inside the building, the door closing softly behind her, sealing my suspicions into something painfully real. I could have driven away then, pretended I'd imagined it all. But lies don't vanish. They multiply in the dark. So I stepped out of the car and walked toward the building, my stomach twisting. A neighbor was sweeping the walkway, humming to herself. I asked casually, "Do you know the woman in 3B? The broom paused. "Sarah? Sweet girl. Just had a baby. Her boyfriend's over all the time. Michael, I think his name is." My heart stopped mid-beat. It felt like gravity itself turned cruel. I thanked her, somehow managing a polite smile before heading back to my car. My legs felt heavy, my throat dry. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat there, the name echoing in my mind like a curse I couldn't unhear. Michael. Her boyfriend. My husband. I started the engine, but the world around me had shifted. The drive home was a blur of lights and noise, and for the first time, silence wasn't my weapon. It was my punishment. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the house looked different, like it was holding its breath. Every window seemed to watch me. Every shadow whispered questions I already knew the answers to. Inside, the scent of Michael's cologne still lingered in the air, sweet and nauseating. I walked through each room slowly, memorizing the life he'd managed to keep so neatly divided. It was incredible, really, how someone could live two truths so convincingly and call both love. I made myself a cup of tea I never drank, just for the noise, the warmth, the illusion of normal. My reflection in the kitchen window looked older, sharper, like I'd aged years in a single afternoon. I replayed every conversation we'd had in the past few months. His late meetings, his sudden business trips, the times he'd come home smelling faintly of baby powder and guilt. Each memory fell into place like puzzle pieces that had been waiting for me to stop pretending they didn't fit. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake beside him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to scream. But instead, I stared at the ceiling and planned. Because the truth, Once seen, can't be unseen. And by morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. The calm before the storm that would tear our perfect little life apart. He came home that night whistling, as if nothing in the world could touch him. I was sitting on the couch, the photos spread neatly across the coffee table. Sarah holding the baby, the GPS screenshots, the proof of every lie. He froze mid-step when he saw them. For a moment, we just stared at each other, two strangers who shared a last name. Laura, he said softly, his voice cracking around my name. I can explain. But explanations are just lies dressed in apology. You said you didn't have time to be a father again, I said, my tone steady, almost gentle. Looks like you made time for someone else's nursery. His eyes darted between the photos, his lips trembling. Laura, please. I made a mistake. I tilted my head, studying him the way I used to study art, searching for meaning in the chaos. A mistake lasts a night, I said. You made a life. That line hit him harder than I expected. He sank into the chair across from me, face buried in his hands. I didn't mean for this to happen, he whispered. I didn't know how to tell you. I felt my pulse slow, my breathing steady. I'd spent too long carrying his guilt for him. You didn't tell me, I said quietly. You hid it in a trunk. He looked up then, eyes wide and wet, reaching for my hand, but I pulled back before he could touch me. I wasn't his wife in that moment. I was his consequence. He tried to stand, to move closer, but I raised my hand and he froze. Don't, I said. My voice didn't shake. It was calm, precise. The kind of calm that comes when you've already crossed from hurt into clarity. He sat back down, swallowing hard. I could hear the rain beginning outside, light at first, tapping against the windows like a heartbeat. The smell of wet earth mixed with the faint trace of his cologne. Both made me sick. You lied to me, Michael, I said, keeping my gaze steady. To Ella, to her. You've been living a double life under my roof. He opened his mouth, but I kept talking. Do you have any idea what that does to someone? To build a life with a person who looks you in the eye and feeds you fiction? My voice cracked then, not from weakness, but from the sheer exhaustion of pretending I didn't know. He tried to explain again, some version of a story where he was confused, lonely, misunderstood. But I'd heard every chapter of that excuse before. This time, it just sounded pathetic. I reached for the blanket resting beside me. That soft yellow fabric had haunted me for weeks. I held it up between us, the embroidery glinting faintly under the living room light. You can have this back, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It belongs with the other lie you created. He stared at it, tears forming but never falling, and before he could say another word, I threw it toward him. It landed in his lap, small and devastating. Then I turned and walked away, the sound of the rain swallowing whatever apology he might have tried to give. I didn't look back, not once. His voice followed me, cracked, desperate, begging, but it all sounded like static now. I reached the door, my fingers trembling as I grabbed my coat. Outside, the rain hit my face in sharp, cold bursts, but it felt cleaner than the air inside that house. I walked to the car without knowing where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. For 10 years, I'd built a home with him, brick by brick, and in one evening, every wall came down. I sat in the driver's seat, drenched, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Through the window, I could still see him standing there, framed by the doorway, holding the blanket like it might save him. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But pity is just another kind of prison, and I'd spent enough of my life behind those bars. I turned the key and watched the headlights cut through the rain like truth slicing through illusion. As I drove away, something inside me shifted, subtle but permanent. The kind of shift you can't undo once it happens. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just let the engine's hum drown out every memory of who we were. By the time the city lights blurred into the distance, one thought anchored me. If he could build a life behind my back, I could build justice right in front of his eyes. I didn't smash anything. I didn't scream or beg. My revenge wasn't loud. It was precise. In the days that followed, I became someone new. Someone steady. I went to work, packed Ella's lunches, smiled at the neighbors, and played the role of the calm, composed wife. But under the surface, I was building something far sharper than rage. A plan. Every betrayal leaves fingerprints, and I had all the evidence I needed to trace his. The blanket was just the beginning. While he pretended life could go back to normal, I was quietly collecting his digital trail. The messages he thought were deleted, the photos stored in hidden folders, the GPS data that mapped every lie. I even found the baby's birth announcement Sarah had posted online. His last name right there in the comments. Proof, visible to the world, waiting for someone brave enough to look. I printed everything, filed it neatly, and made an appointment with my lawyer. Sitting across from her, I laid it all out. Every photo, every message, every deceit disguised as love. She didn't look shocked. She looked impressed. "You've done your homework," she said. "We can work with this." That's when I realized how far I'd come from the woman who once froze at the sight of a yellow blanket. I wasn't broken anymore. I was focused. And soon, Michael would learn that silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. The court hearings were colder than I imagined. No shouting, no drama, just quiet paperwork and truth laid bare under fluorescent lights. Michael tried to look remorseful, but even his guilt felt rehearsed. My lawyer spoke for me most of the time. I barely had to say a word. The evidence did the talking, the texts, the photos, the birth certificate that linked him to a baby he never meant to claim. Every time his lawyer objected, the judge overruled. I sat there, spine straight, heart steady. Justice, I learned, doesn't need noise to be powerful. When the final ruling came, I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. Full custody of Ella, the house, half his savings. Everything he once said was ours became mine. Michael called that night, his voice trembling through the phone. "You took everything," he said, as if I'd stolen it. I almost laughed. "No, Michael," I replied, my voice calm, unshaken. "You gave it away, one lie at a time." There was silence, then the sound of him trying not to cry. It didn't move me. It just confirmed what I already knew. He wasn't sorry. He was sorry he got caught. He tried again, his words desperate, broken. "Can't we fix this?" I closed my eyes, picturing him standing in the wreckage of his own making. "You fixed it yourself," I said softly. "You just fixed it with the wrong woman." Then I hung up. The call ended with a click so final it felt like the closing of a door that would never open again. And for the first time in years, the quiet that followed didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like freedom. After the dust settled, I didn't rush to rebuild. I took my time. Revenge wasn't about destroying him. It was about reclaiming myself. I spent my mornings with Ella, walking to school hand in hand, feeling the sun on our faces instead of the shadow of his lies. People asked what happened between us, and I always gave the same answer. We outgrew each other. It was simpler than explaining how betrayal can hollow out a person and still make them stronger. Nights were the hardest at first. I'd catch the faintest trace of his scent in a forgotten sweater, or see a photo of us smiling before everything fell apart. But even that pain became fuel. I started painting again, something I hadn't done since before Ella was born. Each brushstroke felt like an exhale, a small piece of myself returning. Revenge wasn't fire, it was art, and I was learning how to create again from the ashes. One evening, I found the baby blanket tucked in a drawer I hadn't opened in months. I held it for a long time, no tears this time, just a strange calm. It didn't feel like evidence anymore. It felt like closure. I folded it neatly and placed it in a donation box by the door. Something meant to hide a lie would soon bring warmth to someone innocent. And that, I thought, was the truest kind of justice I could ever ask for. 6 months later, the air in our new apartment felt different. Lighter, freer. The city hummed outside the window, but inside, it was calm. Ella was painting her bedroom walls a cheerful yellow, her little hands covered in streaks of color. "I like yellow, Mom," she said, beaming. "It's happy." I smiled, leaning against the doorway. "It is, isn't it?" I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that sound, her laughter filling a space that no longer echoed with tension. Happiness, I learned, doesn't come back all at once. It seeps in, one small moment at a time. I started sleeping again. Real sleep, not the restless kind that waits for a door to open in the middle of the night. I'd wake to sunlight spilling across the sheets instead of anxiety creeping into my chest. Sometimes I'd catch myself humming while making breakfast, the way I used to before everything broke. It wasn't the same life, but maybe that was the point. This version of me didn't walk on eggshells. She walked barefoot, steady, unafraid of the mess that comes with starting over. Every now and then I'd open the closet and see the box on the top shelf, the one that held the blanket. It no longer haunted me. It reminded me of what I survived, of how something meant to cover a lie could still find purpose in the world. Soon, I'd donate it to a shelter downtown. Someone else's beginning deserved a softer start than mine had. And as I closed the box again, I whispered to myself, "That's the only justice I ever needed." There are moments now when I catch myself smiling for no reason. It happens while watering the plants on the balcony, or when I hear Ella singing in the shower, off-key, but fearless. That used to be my favorite sound before everything fell apart, and it still is. I thought the past would always follow me, whispering what I'd lost, but it doesn't. It just sits quietly in the background, reminding me that endings aren't always tragedies. Sometimes they're directions. I've started to enjoy my own company again. I take walks after dinner, sometimes stopping at the cafe on the corner for tea. The barista knows my order now, Earl Grey, a touch of honey. She always smiles when she sees me, and I smile back, not out of politeness but because I can. It's strange how peace feels foreign at first, like a language you once knew but forgot how to speak. Yet, with every sunrise, I'm learning it again. Slowly, fluently. Michael hasn't called since that last night. At first, the silence between us felt heavy, unnatural. Now it feels like space, clean and necessary. I no longer wait for closure from him, because I already have it. The truth is, I didn't lose a husband. I lost a lie I once called love. And though it hurt to let go, it freed me to finally meet the woman I was always meant to become. This morning, sunlight poured through the window, spilling across the kitchen floor like gold. I stood there with my coffee, breathing it all in. The sound of Ella humming, the faint buzz of the city waking up. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Every scar, every ache, every quiet victory, it all belonged to me now. There's a strange beauty in rebuilding from ruins. You start to see strength in the cracks instead of shame. I used to wonder if I'd ever trust again. Now, I trust myself, and that's enough. I took the donation box to the car later that afternoon. The blanket rested neatly inside, folded and sealed, ready for a new beginning somewhere far from mine. I didn't cry when I handed it over. Instead, I felt a warmth in my chest, the kind that comes when something broken finally finds its purpose. Maybe that's what healing really is. Not forgetting what hurt you, but giving it a softer ending. As I walked back home, Ella ran toward me, her paint-stained hands reaching for mine. "You're smiling again, Mom," she said, and I laughed. Really laughed, for the first time in years. The world felt open again. And as I looked up at the sky, I realized something simple and profound. He had created a life in secret, but I had created a better one without him.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.